I didn't cry when my husband realized the truth. I didn't scream when his hands started shaking. I felt calm. That's the part people don't understand. And maybe that's why I'm telling you this. If you're listening right now, I want you to stay with me for a moment. Don't decide who's right or wrong yet. Just listen. By the end, you'll understand why my silence mattered more than any words I could have said. This happened years ago, but the memory still lives in my body. Not loudly, not violently. It sits there, steady and quiet, like something that taught me how to survive. I was 16 when my husband chose his sister's lie over me. 16 when he threw me out into a storm. And 16 when a stranger saved my life. But I didn't marry him at 16. That part confuses people. What happened that night didn't end our story. It shaped it, twisted it, buried something that should have stayed buried. When he finally learned who found me that night, who pulled me out of the cold, his body betrayed him before his mouth did. His fingers trembled. His breath stuttered. He couldn't look at me. And I still didn't cry. I'm Emily Parker. I'm in my late 20s now. I speak calmly because I learned early that panic doesn't save you. Clarity does. I'm not telling this to punish anyone. I'm telling it because some stories don't let you go until you give them a voice. Back then, I believed in certainty, in family, in the idea that if you were honest and loyal, the people you loved would protect you. I thought truth had weight. I thought love was enough to anchor you when things got hard. I was wrong. The night everything broke apart wasn't dramatic at first. There was no shouting in the beginning, no slammed doors, just a look on his face that didn't belong to the boy I trusted. A look like he'd already decided something, and I was just catching up. Rain had been falling for hours, the kind that soaks through your clothes without asking permission. The wind rattled the windows. I remember thinking it was strange how quiet the house felt inside, like it was holding its breath. I didn't know then that I was about to lose everything I thought was solid. I didn't know I'd be standing outside with nowhere to go. I didn't know fear could be so physical, so heavy in your chest. I didn't know survival could hinge on one person choosing to stop. And I definitely didn't know that years later, the man who shut the door on me would stand frozen in our kitchen, unable to speak, because the past had finally caught up with him. People ask me why I stayed, why I ever married him after that, why I didn't leave the moment I could. Those are fair questions, but they come from the outside, from a place where outcomes are already known. Inside the moment, things are different. Inside the moment, you're just a girl trying to understand how love can disappear so quickly. You're trying to make sense of how a lie can sound more convincing than the truth when it comes from someone blood-related. You're trying to survive the cold, both the weather and the kind that settles in when you realize you're alone. I'm not asking you to side with me yet. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for patience. Because this story isn't about revenge. It's about recognition. And by the time I'm done, you'll understand exactly why I felt nothing when his hands began to shake, and why that scared him more than any anger ever could. Before that night, my life felt settled. Not perfect, but steady in the way you trust without checking your footing every step. I was 16, yes, but I'd been forced to grow up earlier than most. My parents had divorced when I was young, and I learned quickly how to read rooms, how to stay quiet when things felt fragile. Stability mattered to me. I clung to it. His family felt like stability. I'd known Daniel since middle school. We didn't fall into each other dramatically. We just stayed. The kind of closeness that builds slowly, without fireworks, until one day you look up and realize you can't imagine your life without that person in it. He was gentle back then, thoughtful, the type of boy who remembered how you took your tea and walked you home without being asked. His sister, Rachel, was older. 2 years doesn't sound like much, but when you're 16, it's a lifetime. She had opinions about everything. She was sharp where I was quiet, confident where I hesitated. I told myself she intimidated me because I admired her. That was easier to believe. Their house was always busy, voices overlapping, doors opening and closing, the smell of coffee and laundry detergent mixed together. I spent more time there than at my own place. It felt safe, like a place where people stayed. Looking back, that's probably why I ignored what didn't quite fit. Daniel trusted his sister completely. Not blindly, he would have said. Just instinctively. She was family. She'd always been there. When she spoke, he listened. I noticed it, but I framed it kindly in my mind. Loyalty is a good thing, right? And Rachel, she tolerated me. That's the word that fits best. She wasn't cruel. Not openly. She smiled when required, asked polite questions, commented on my clothes. But there was a distance that never closed. A subtle edge. I told myself I was imagining it. I wanted to belong. That desire can make you generous with explanations. At 16, I believed relationships were built on consistency. Show up. Be honest. Don't cause trouble. If something felt wrong, it would eventually correct itself. I didn't know yet that some problems don't resolve. They wait. The night of the storm wasn't supposed to be anything special. I'd gone over after school to work on an assignment with Daniel. His parents were out. Rachel was home, upstairs. The air felt thick, heavy with the kind of humidity that presses against your skin. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, watching the sky darken faster than it should have. Daniel kept checking his phone. Rachel came down once, said something sharp under her breath about the weather, then disappeared again. Nothing happened. That's the unsettling part. No argument. No accusation. Just normal moments stacked together. Until they weren't. There was a pause. A shift. Daniel went upstairs after Rachel called his name. He came back down different. His jaw tight. His eyes unfocused, like he was replaying something he didn't want to hear. He asked me to leave. Not angrily. Not kindly. Just decided. I laughed at first because it didn't make sense. The rain was coming down hard by then. The wind rattled the windows. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said Rachel told him something. He didn't say what. Just that he needed space and that I should go home. I remember standing there, my backpack over my shoulder, trying to read his face. Trying to find the boy I trusted. There was a moment, brief but sharp, where his eyes flicked away from mine. That was the warning sign. Not the storm. Not the request. That flicker of avoidance. Now let me ask you something before I go further. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was off, but you ignored it because you didn't want to believe it? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. I stepped outside anyway. I told myself it was fine. That we'd talk later. That misunderstandings happen. I didn't know yet that the misunderstanding wasn't between Daniel and me. It was between truth and blood. It didn't. I started walking. Slowly at first, then faster, trying to outrun the cold that was already seeping into my bones. My house was about 20 minutes away on foot. I'd walked it dozens of times. That night, it felt longer. Endless. I kept replaying Daniel's face in my head. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes. The way his voice stayed flat, like he was reading lines he hadn't written. I told myself he was overwhelmed. That siblings fight. That maybe Rachel had misunderstood something I'd said or done. I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew that. And yet, doubt has a way of creeping in when someone you trust suddenly treats you like a stranger. By the time I reached the corner near the old oak tree, my phone buzzed. I stopped under the branches, shielding the screen from the rain with my palm. It was a message from Daniel. Rachel told me what you did. That was it. No explanation. No question. My fingers felt numb as I typed back, asking what he meant. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing. A few seconds later, another message came through. I can't deal with this right now. My chest tightened, not from the cold, from confusion. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I stood there in the rain, staring at my phone like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. What had I done? I scrolled through my messages with Rachel. Nothing unusual. No arguments. No secrets. My mind started racing, searching for something, anything, that could have been twisted. A comment. A look. A moment alone. The more I searched, the more hollow I felt. I kept walking, but my steps slowed. The storm intensified. The the wind pushing rain sideways into my face. Cars passed occasionally, the headlights blurring through the downpour. I felt small, exposed. Another message buzzed. This one from Rachel. I didn't want it to be like this, Emily. But you crossed the line. My heart pounded. I typed back immediately, asking her what she was talking about. She didn't respond. That's when it hit me, not fully, but enough to make my stomach drop. Whatever she told him, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a version of events where I was already guilty. I considered turning back, knocking on the door, demanding an explanation. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe, or fear, or the realization that if I went back and begged to be heard, I'd be accepting a role I didn't deserve. So I kept walking. The road near my house ran alongside a wooded area. No sidewalks, just wet asphalt and mud. My shoes slipped once, and I caught myself on a fence post, my hands shaking, not from the cold anymore, but from the weight of not knowing. When I finally reached my street, I was drenched and exhausted. I fumbled with my keys, my fingers stiff. The porch light was off. That was unusual. My mom usually left it on when she knew I was out late. I tried the door. Locked. I knocked. No answer. I checked my phone again. No missed calls. No messages. I rang the bell. Still nothing. A sick thought crept in. Maybe she wasn't home. Maybe she'd gone out and forgotten I didn't have my key that night. The rain soaked deeper. My teeth started chattering. I sat on the steps, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to stay warm. Minutes passed. Then more. I thought about calling Daniel, about asking him to come get me. But the idea of his silence felt heavier than the storm. I didn't want to hear his doubt again. Not like that. So I waited. And as the cold settled in, one truth became unavoidable. Whatever Rachel had said, it had changed something fundamental. Not just between Daniel and me, but in how he saw me. Pause for a second. What would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted him right then, or waited and watched? Drop your answer below. I really want to know. Because that choice, to walk away instead of fighting, set everything else in motion. And I had no idea how far the consequences would reach. I don't know exactly how long I sat on those steps. Time stretches when your body is cold and your mind won't settle. Every few minutes, I checked my phone, even though I already knew there'd be nothing new. Silence can be louder than shouting if you let it. Eventually, I called my mom. Straight to voicemail. That's when fear stopped being abstract. I stood up and paced the porch, hugging myself, trying to keep circulation going. My clothes were heavy with water. My hair stuck to my face. I thought about knocking on a neighbor's door, but it was late, and pride whispered that I didn't want to explain myself half-frozen and shaking. So I did the stupid thing. I walked back. The rain had eased slightly, but the wind hadn't. By the time I reached Daniel's street again, my legs felt weak. I stood across from his house, watching the light in his bedroom window. He was awake. Of course he was. I crossed the lawn and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. The door opened just enough for me to see his face. Relief flared for half a second, then vanished. His expression was guarded. Closed. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I told him I couldn't get into my house. I told him my mom wasn't answering. I didn't accuse. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked if I could come in until the storm passed. He hesitated. That hesitation did more damage than the words that followed. Rachel appeared behind him, wrapped in a blanket, her hair dry, her face calm. Too calm. She looked at me and sighed, like I was an inconvenience she'd been expecting. "I told you she'd do this," she said quietly. I didn't even understand what this was supposed to be. Daniel turned back to me, his jaw clenched. "Rachel told me everything," he said. "I don't know why you're pretending." That's when she spoke again. Soft, measured, almost kind. "She tried to get me to lie for her," Rachel said, "about something she did at school. Something that could have gotten Daniel in trouble too. When I refused, she threatened me." I stared at her. The words didn't land all at once. They came in pieces, like hailstones. Each one hurt more than the last. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. She said if I didn't back her up, she'd tell people things about me, Rachel continued. Things that weren't true. I didn't want to believe it either, Daniel. But here we are. I looked at him, begged him with my eyes to see me, to hear how impossible that sounded, to remember who I was. He didn't. You need to go, he said. I can't trust you right now. Something inside me fractured. Not loudly, just cleanly, like a bone breaking without blood. I shook my head, finally finding my voice. I told him she was lying. I told him I'd never threaten anyone. I told him to check my phone, my messages, anything. Rachel stepped forward. Don't do this, Emily, she said. You're only making it worse. That was the moment I understood. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't defensive. She was in control. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a story she'd prepared, and he'd accepted. I'm not choosing sides, Daniel said, like that made it better. I just need space. Then he closed the door. I stood there for a long second, staring at the wood grain, my reflection faintly visible in the glass. Then I turned away. I didn't cry yet. Shock doesn't allow for tears. It keeps you functional. I walked, not toward my house, away from everything, down streets I didn't recognize. The storm picked up again, and the temperature dropped fast. My body started shaking uncontrollably. My thoughts slowed, then blurred. I remember sitting on a bus stop bench, my vision tunneling. I remember thinking how strange it was that this was happening because of a lie. One sentence, one decision. I need you to understand, this wasn't just betrayal. This was my whole life collapsing. Have you ever been blindsided like this? If you've been there, share your story below. We healed better together. I don't remember falling. I remember waking up to a voice. A man's voice. Older. Steady. Hey, he said gently. Stay with me. Strong hands were lifting me, wrapping something warm around my shoulders. A jacket. A blanket. I couldn't see his face clearly through the rain and my fading vision. He asked my name. I answered. Bailey. He asked how old I was. I told him. His grip tightened, not painfully, but protectively. Okay, he said. I've got you. I didn't know it then, but that sentence would echo years later in a kitchen filled with silence, when the man who once shut me out would finally learn who had taken me in. And nothing would ever be the same again. I woke up in a hospital room. Not dramatically. No gasping, no panic. Just the quiet hum of machines and the faint smell of disinfectant. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then my body reminded me. The ache in my joints. The dryness in my throat. The heaviness that comes after fear has already done its work. A nurse noticed my eyes open and smiled softly. She told me I'd been found with mild hypothermia. That a man had brought me in after finding me unconscious at a bus stop. That I was lucky. Lucky. The word felt strange, considering everything that had led me there. But I nodded. I thanked her. I learned early that politeness makes things easier. A police officer came later, asked routine questions. Where had I been? Why was I outside so late? I answered carefully, truthfully, without embellishment. I didn't mention Daniel's name. I didn't mention Rachel. Not yet. The man who found me had already left. The nurse said he'd waited until he knew I'd be okay, then gone back to his night shift. She didn't know his name, just that he worked nearby and seemed very concerned. Concerned. From a stranger. My mom arrived hours later, frantic and pale. She hugged me tightly, apologizing over and over for not hearing her phone. I told her it was okay, because it was. She hadn't betrayed me. The doctors released me that afternoon. I went home, showered, slept, and when I woke up, something had shifted. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. Daniel didn't call. Rachel didn't message. And in that silence, I realized something important. If someone can believe the worst about you without asking, without checking, without hesitation, then they were never really on your side. That realization didn't hurt the way I expected it to. It steadied me. I went back to school 2 days later. Whispers followed me. I didn't know what had been said or to whom, but I could feel the change. People look at you differently when a story has been told about you and you weren't in the room. I didn't defend myself, not because I was weak, but because I was done performing innocence for people who'd already decided otherwise. Daniel avoided me. Rachel didn't. She cornered me near the lockers one afternoon, her voice low and controlled. She told me I should let things settle. That pushing back would only make me look guilty. That Daniel needed time. I looked at her then, really looked, and I saw it. Not cruelty, calculation. She needed the lie to hold, and she assumed I'd stay quiet to keep the peace. That was when I made my decision. I didn't confront her. I didn't expose her. Not yet. I started documenting every interaction, every message, every time she contradicted herself. I wrote things down, dates, times, words. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it, but I knew I'd need it. At 16, that was my version of control. I focused on myself, my grades, my part-time job. I built a life that didn't include them. Slowly, deliberately, Daniel tried to apologize weeks later, vaguely, without admitting anything specific. I listened. I nodded. I didn't argue, and I didn't take him back. Years passed. We crossed paths again in our early 20s. By then, Rachel had moved away. The lie had faded into something unspoken, unresolved. Daniel had grown quieter, more careful. He apologized properly this time, or at least tried to. I believed he was sorry. That's the part people judge me for. We rebuilt something. Slowly, with conditions, transparency, therapy, time. Eventually, we married. Not because I forgot, but because I believed people could grow. And for a while, it seemed like they had. But some truths don't disappear. They wait. And the man who saved me that night, the stranger whose name I never learned, was still out there, living his life, carrying a moment he probably thought was small. I didn't. Here's where I made my choice. Do you believe in revenge or in walking away? When someone destroys your trust, what's the right move? Comment below. I want both sides. Because what came next wasn't loud. It was inevitable. The truth surfaced by accident. Those are always the most dangerous kinds. It was a small dinner. Just Daniel and me, sitting at our kitchen table years later, the rain tapping softly against the windows. Not a storm this time, just enough to be noticed. He was telling a story from work, something trivial, when the conversation drifted, carelessly, into the past. I still think about that night sometimes, he said, not looking at me. When you disappeared. I didn't respond right away. He kept talking, filling the silence. I really thought you'd just gone home. Rachel said. I raised my hand. Not sharply, just enough to stop him. She said what? I asked. He hesitated. That old hesitation. Familiar. Predictable. That you'd been found by someone, he said slowly. Some guy. That you were fine. That you were just trying to make a point. I looked at him then. Really looked. No, I said. That's not what happened. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? I stood up and walked to the hallway closet. My movements were calm, measured. I pulled out a small folder, thin, worn at the edges. I'd kept it all these years, not out of bitterness, out of respect for the truth. I placed it on the table. Inside were hospital discharge papers, a police card with a badge number, notes I'd written in careful handwriting when memory was still sharp. Daniel opened it slowly. As he read, the color drained from his face. She told you I was pretending, I said evenly. She told you I was manipulative, that I threatened her. His hand started to shake. I had hypothermia, I continued. I passed out at a bus stop. A stranger found me. He stayed until the doctors said I'd be okay. Daniel swallowed hard. She said you'd called her afterward, that you admitted you'd exaggerated everything. I shook my head. I was unconscious. The room felt very quiet. I never told you who saved me, I said, because you never asked. That's when it happened. The knock at the door. We both froze. The timing was almost cruel in its precision. Daniel stood, still holding the papers, his movements unsteady. He opened the door. A man stood there, older now, gray at the temples, familiar in a way memory doesn't always explain. "I'm sorry," the man said. "I think I have the wrong house." I felt my breath catch. "No," I said softly, stepping forward. "You don't." He looked at me more closely then. Recognition flickered. His eyes widened. "You," he said quietly, "from the bus stop." Daniel turned between us, confusion giving way to something closer to fear. "This is Mark," I said. He was a paramedic back then. Off duty, on his way to work. Mark nodded. "I saw her collapse," he said. "Didn't think twice." Daniel's hands were shaking uncontrollably now. "You brought her to the hospital?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Mark said. "I stayed until she was stable." Daniel looked at me. His mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Rachel's lie collapsed in that doorway. Not with shouting, not with confrontation, with presence. This is the moment everything changed. "Be honest. Are you rooting for me right now, or do you think I went too far? Tell me in the comments. I can take it." Mark apologized again for the interruption, but I invited him in. We talked briefly, caught up on nothing and everything. He left soon after, kind as ever. When the door closed, Daniel sank into a chair. "I didn't know," he whispered. I nodded. "I know." That was the cruelest part, because he could have known. And now, he finally did. After Mark left, the house felt different. Not tense, hollow, like something structural had finally been removed, and we were both standing there, assessing the damage. Daniel didn't speak for a long time. He stared at the table, at the papers still spread out between us. His hands had stopped shaking, but his posture was folded inward like someone bracing for impact that had already landed. "I don't know how to live with this," he said eventually. I believed him. But belief doesn't rebuild trust. It just acknowledges pain. "I lived with it," I replied. Not sharply, not cruelly, just honestly. 4 years. That night, we didn't argue. There was nothing left to debate. The lie had been exposed, and with it, the choice he'd made when we were 16. No amount of regret could reach back and change that storm, that door closing, that cold bench. We went to bed separately. Not as punishment, just necessity. I needed space to feel what I'd delayed for a very long time. In the days that followed, Daniel tried. He apologized in ways he never had before. Specific, uncomfortable, owning his silence as much as his belief. He reached out to Rachel. She denied everything. Cut contact. The pattern held. And for the first time, he saw it. We started therapy again, but this time the focus wasn't reconciliation. It was understanding. Could we move forward knowing this was always part of our foundation? Could trust exist where instinct had failed so completely? I didn't rush the answer. I thought about what I'd lost that night. Not just safety, but certainty. The belief that love automatically protects you. I thought about what I'd gained. Independence, discernment, the ability to sit in discomfort without breaking. Some things had survived. My sense of self, my capacity for empathy, my respect for quiet strength, the kind that doesn't announce itself. Other things hadn't. Eventually, Daniel and I separated. Not explosively, not bitterly. With grief? Yes, but also clarity. We wanted different things from the truth. He wanted forgiveness. I wanted peace. We still speak. Carefully, kindly. He carries his remorse. I carry my survival. As for Rachel, I don't know where she is now. I stopped checking. Lies don't age well, they just move. And Mark, the man who saved me, became a distant but steady presence in my life. We exchange holiday cards. Occasionally coffee when schedules align. Not romantic, just connected by a moment that mattered. Looking back now, I wonder if I'd do it the same way again. What about you? Was the pain necessary to become who you are today? Let me know below. Because I don't believe suffering is noble. But I do believe awareness is earned. And mine came at 16, in the rain, from a stranger who didn't ask questions. He just stopped. I used to think the hardest part of betrayal was the pain. It isn't. It's the way it rearranges your instincts. The way it teaches you that love without discernment can leave you exposed. That loyalty, when unexamined, can become dangerous. I don't hate my ex-husband. Hate requires energy I no longer want to spend. What I feel is something quieter: acceptance. He made the best choice he could with the information he accepted. And I learned what happens when someone values familiarity over truth. If you're listening to this and you've been doubted, dismissed, or left in the cold, literally or emotionally, I want you to hear this clearly. Surviving didn't make you lucky. It made you capable. You don't owe anyone forgiveness on a timeline that ignores your healing. And you don't need to prove your innocence to people who never planned to see it. Some people will only understand what they lost when it's standing calmly in front of them, whole, intact, no longer asking to be chosen. So here's my final question. Is it better to forgive and move on, or to make sure they understand exactly what they lost? There's no wrong answer. Drop it in the comments. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Emily Parker's voice travels. Trust is precious, but self-trust is what saves you when everything else falls away.